The rangefinder flickered twice, then died. Sergeant First Class Danny Reeves slapped the side of the device, cursed under his breath, and looked up at the distant steel target shimmering in the August heat. 1,500 yards. Maybe 16. The old man sitting on the wooden bench behind them hadn't moved in 20 minutes. What these soldiers didn't know about that old man would change everything they thought they understood about their profession. This is a story about what happens when technology fails and memory becomes the only weapon left. Type sniper in the comments if you believe some knowledge should never be forgotten. Fort Benning, Georgia. The long-range precision course stretched across red Georgia clay and scrub brush, targets placed at intervals from 800 to 2,000 yards. It was the kind of range where reputations were made and egos were humbled. Sergeant Reeves and his spotter, Specialist Torres, had been running drills since dawn. Their Kestrel weather meters, laser rangefinders, and ballistic computers represented $40,000 worth of technology designed to put rounds on target at distances their grandfathers would have considered impossible. The old man had wandered onto the range around noon. White hair, faded green jacket with frayed cuffs, hands that trembled slightly when he lifted his coffee thermos. The range safety officer had tried to move him along, but someone from the armory said he was fine, said he had credentials, said just let him watch. So there he sat, on a bench meant for observers, saying nothing, watching everything. Reeves, you getting a read or not? Torres kept his eye pressed to the spotting scope, sweat dripping down his temple. Rangefinder's dead. Battery, I think. Reeves pulled out his phone, thumbing through the ballistic app. Give me a second. I'll use the app. Phone's not going to cut it at this distance. You need the Kestrel data. Kestrel's showing errors too. Something's wrong with the humidity sensor. Torres pulled back from the scope and wiped his face. So what? We're done? Pack it up because the computer's died? That was when the old man spoke. His voice was quiet, but it carried across the firing line like it was meant to be heard. 1642? Both soldiers turned. The old man hadn't moved from his bench. His eyes were fixed on the distant target, squinting slightly against the glare. Excuse me? Reeves stood up, irritation plain on his face. Your target. 1,642 yards, give or take 3. The old man took a slow sip from his thermos. You're shooting the M2010 .300 Win Mag. At that distance, your drop is going to be roughly 28 MOA. Call it 28 1/4 if you want to be precise. Torres let out a short laugh. 28 MOA? Sir, with all due respect, our software calculates 31.6 at 1600. Your software is using standard atmospheric conditions. Sea level, 59 degrees Fahrenheit, 29.53 inches of mercury. The old man set down his thermos. You're at 1,100 feet elevation. It's 94 degrees. Barometric pressure this morning was 30.12. Your bullet's going to fly flatter than your computer thinks. 28 1/4, maybe 28.3. Reeves exchanged a glance with Torres, the kind of glance that said this old man had clearly lost his mind, but they were too polite to say it directly. Sir, I appreciate the input, but we've been doing this for 6 years. The software accounts for all those variables. Does it account for the fact that you haven't updated your temperature input since 0630 this morning? The old man's eyes finally moved from the target to meet Reeves directly. I watched you set it up. You punched in 78 degrees. It was 78 at dawn. It's not 78 anymore. Torres shifted uncomfortably. He pulled out the Kestrel, checked the temperature log. 78 degrees, entered at 0632. Current actual temperature reading before the sensor failed, 94. That's a 16-degree differential, the old man continued. Rule of thumb, every 20 degrees warmer, you lose about half a minute of angle at extended range. Your computer's been lying to you all morning. You've probably been shooting high since 10 o'clock. Reeves felt his jaw tighten. He had been shooting high. 3 rounds at 1,400 yards had impacted 6 inches above center. He'd blamed the ammunition. Look, sir, Reeves kept his voice steady, professional. We don't know who you are, but this is a military training exercise. Civilians aren't really supposed to be offering advice on our firing solutions. The old man nodded slowly. Fair enough. I'm just an old man with nothing better to do than watch young soldiers trust machines they don't understand. He picked up his thermos again. When I was learning this trade, we didn't have machines. We had notebooks. We had mathematics. We had memory. Your computers are wonderful tools, but tools break. Batteries die. Software glitches. Satellites go dark. He paused. And when they do, what do you have left? Torres stepped forward, something between challenge and curiosity in his voice. Okay, you seem to know a lot. What's the drop at 1800 yards? Same rifle, same conditions. The old man didn't hesitate. 34.7 MOA, wind from your 2 o'clock. You're seeing about 8 miles per hour at the flags. That's going to push you left about 4 MOA at that distance. Come right 4, dial up 34 3/4, you'll centre punch it. And 2,000 yards? 42.3 MOA, but at 2,000, your wind call becomes critical. An 8 mile per hour wind is going to move that bullet almost 6 MOA. You're also dealing with transonic instability. The .300 Winchester Magnum starts going subsonic around 2,100 yards in these conditions. At exactly 2,000, you're still supersonic, but you're on the edge. Your groups are going to open up regardless of how perfect your data is. Torres pulled out his phone, opened the ballistic calculator and began inputting the actual conditions. 94 degrees, 1,100 feet elevation, 30.12 inches of pressure. He ran the calculation for 1,800 yards. The answer came back, 34.6 minutes of angle. He ran it again for 2,000 yards. The answer, 42.2 MOA. The old man was within 1/10 of a minute at both distances, from memory, without a single piece of technology. How? Torres started, then stopped. Sir, who are you? The old man was quiet for a long moment. He looked back at the distant targets, at the heat waves rising from the red clay, at something none of them could see. That was when the black SUV pulled into the range parking area. The doors opened, and a man in an army dress uniform stepped out. Eagles on his shoulders, a full colonel. Colonel Marcus Webb walked straight to the firing line, his eyes fixed on the old man on the bench. Reeves and Torres snapped to attention. Range officers scrambled. Nobody had told them a colonel was coming. Nobody had told them anything. At ease! The colonel's voice was calm, but there was something heavy in it. He walked past the soldiers without acknowledgement, stopped directly in front of the old man, and stood there in silence. Then Colonel Webb did something neither soldier had ever seen a full colonel do. He came to attention, and he saluted. Master Sergeant Elias Cade. The colonel's voice caught slightly. Sir, it's been a long time. The old man rose slowly from the bench. He didn't return the salute, not officially, but he nodded with a weight that seemed to carry its own formality. Marcus, I heard you made colonel. Your father would be proud. Sir, he learned everything he knew from you, and so did I. The colonel turned to face Reeves and Torres, who stood frozen, trying to process what they were witnessing. Soldiers, do you know who this man is? Neither spoke. This is Master Sergeant Elias Cade, retired, United States Army. He served as a sniper instructor at this very installation for 19 years. Before that, he was deployed to Vietnam, where he accumulated 114 confirmed kills over 3 tours. He served in Grenada, Panama, and the First Gulf War. He was the primary developer of the Army's long-range ballistic engagement tables before computers existed. Every piece of data your software uses, every drop chart, every wind calculation, he helped create the original baselines through live fire testing and mathematical modelling. The colonel paused. When I went through sniper school in 1994, Master Sergeant Cade made us memorise our dope cards to 2,000 yards. Not because we'd always have them, because sometimes we wouldn't. He failed anyone who couldn't recite their data from memory under stress. Reeves felt the blood drain from his face. He thought about how he'd dismissed this man, how he'd called him a civilian, how he'd suggested he didn't belong here. The data you recited, Torres said quietly, 28 1/4 at 1642, 34.7 at 1800, 42.3 at 2000. You weren't guessing. I fired approximately 40,000 rounds through .300 Winchester Magnum rifles over the past 50 years. The old man, Master Sergeant Cade, sat back down on his bench. The numbers aren't something I memorized. They're something I became. Every elevation, every wind call, every temperature correction, it's written in muscle memory and mental pathways that go deeper than conscious thought. Your computers know the formulas. I know the bullet. Colonel Webb turned back to the 2 soldiers. Master Sergeant Cade is here because I asked him to come. We've been seeing a pattern across the sniper community. Soldiers who can shoot sub-MOA groups on a square range with all their technology functioning. but who fall apart the moment something goes wrong. Batteries die in cold weather, electronics fail in humidity, satellites get jammed, EMP bursts can wipe out every circuit in your kit. He gestured toward the old man. I wanted you to meet someone who learned this craft when failure wasn't an option, because there was nothing to fail. No rangefinders, no ballistic computers, no apps, just math, memory, and the willingness to do the work. Reeves stepped forward. Master Sergeant Cade, sir. I owe you an apology. The old man waved a hand. You don't owe me anything, son. You're a product of your training and your era. You were taught to trust machines, and machines are trustworthy most of the time. But let me ask you something. His eyes fixed on Reeves with sudden intensity. If you're in a hide site in some contested valley, and an EMP takes out everything electronic within 5 miles, and you've got an enemy commander at 1900 yards, and the lives of 30 Marines depend on you making that shot, what are you going to do? Reeves had no answer. That's why you learn this. Cade pulled a worn leather notebook from inside his jacket. The pages were yellowed, the binding cracked, the handwriting faded but meticulous. This is my dope book from 1971. Every shot I ever took in Vietnam is in here. Every distance, every condition, every hold. I still know every page by heart. He handed it to Torres. The formulas haven't changed. Gravity is still gravity. Wind is still wind. The only thing that's changed is how we calculate, and we've traded understanding for convenience. Torres opened the notebook carefully, reverently. Page after page of handwritten data. Drawings of wind flags, temperature conversion tables, sketches of terrain, notes about specific shots, specific missions, specific moments when mathematics and memory were the only things standing between success and failure. I want to teach you, Cade said, not because your technology is bad, because your dependence on it is dangerous. I want to show you how to build a drop chart from first principles, how to calculate wind drift without a kestrel, how to estimate range using the mill relation formula when your rangefinder dies, how to use your reticle as a tool instead of just a sight picture. He stood again, joints protesting, and walked to the firing line. He looked down at the M2010 rifle lying on its bipod. May I? Reeves nodded immediately. Of course, Master Sergeant. Cade settled behind the rifle. His movements were slow but precise. He adjusted the scope, his fingers finding the turrets, with the familiarity of decades. Target at 1642, temperature 94, elevation 1100 feet, barometer 30.12, wind 8 miles per hour from 2 o'clock. He spoke as he dialed. Drop is 28 1/4. Wind hold is 2.3 MOA right. I'm going to come up 28.25 and hold right edge of the silhouette instead of dialing wind. He took 3 slow breaths. On the 4th exhale, he pressed the trigger. Downrange, the steel target rang. Torres confirmed through the spotting scope. Center mass, 1/2 inch left of point of aim. The 1/2 inch is me, Cade said, pushing himself up from the rifle. 73 years old. Hands aren't what they used to be. He looked at the 2 soldiers. Your hands are steady, your eyes are sharp. If you learn the fundamentals, really learn them, not just memorize them, but understand them, you'll be better than I ever was. But only if you put in the work. Only if you decide that some knowledge is too important to outsource to a battery. The sun had shifted lower by the time they finished. Cade spent the next 3 hours teaching them things no manual covered. How to read heat mirages to estimate wind speed and direction. How the spin of the Earth affects a bullet at extreme range, the Coriolis effect. Spinning your shot right in the northern hemisphere. How to estimate distance using the apparent size of known objects. How to build a field expedient wind meter from grass and a straight stick. He taught them the math behind the magic. The formula for MOA drop. Bullet drop in inches multiplied by 100, divided by distance in yards. The wind drift formula, time of flight multiplied by wind speed in miles per hour, multiplied by a constant specific to the bullet's ballistic coefficient. Your computers do this in milliseconds, he said. You should be able to do it in your head in 30 seconds. Not because it's faster, because when those milliseconds are the difference between life and death, and your computer is dead, you need options. As the afternoon faded, Reeves asked the question that had been forming in his mind for hours. Master Sergeant, why did you come here today? Really? Cade was quiet. He looked out at the range, at the target still standing in the distance, at the red Georgia clay that had seen generations of soldiers learn and fail and learn again. Because I've been watching, he finally said. I've been watching a whole generation of warriors become dependent on things that can be taken away. Drones, satellites, computers, networks. All of it can be jammed, hacked, destroyed. And when it is, you're left with nothing but what's between your ears. I came because someone needs to remember what that was like. Someone needs to pass it on. He picked up his thermos, tucked his notebook back inside his jacket. The Russians have been practicing electronic warfare for 20 years. The Chinese have been hardening their systems while we've been making ours more connected. The next war, the real one, isn't going to be won by whoever has the best technology. It's going to be won by whoever can still function when the technology is gone. Colonel Webb walked Cade back to the parking area. Reeves and Torres watched them go, saw the Colonel open the SUV door for the old man, saw them exchange words they couldn't hear, saw a handshake that lasted longer than handshakes usually do. The next morning a package arrived at the barracks. Inside was a new leather notebook, blank pages, and a handwritten note. Fill this with your own data. Fire every distance, every condition, until the numbers are part of who you are. The computer is your servant, not your master. Never forget which one of you is in charge. E. Cade. M. S. G. Ret. Reeves and Torres started that afternoon. 500 yards, 600, 700. Writing down the drop, the wind, the conditions. Running the math by hand, then checking it against the computer. Finding the places where they matched and the places where real-world testing proved the computer wrong. It took 3 months before either of them could recite their dope charts from memory. It took 6 months before they could calculate wind drift in their heads faster than they could input it into an app. But by the end of that year, when the advanced evaluation came, when they were given scenarios where all electronic equipment was disabled, they were the only team in their class that completed every engagement, every target, every distance. The evaluator asked them how they'd prepared. Reeves told him about an old man on a bench, about a worn leather notebook, about the day they learned that the most advanced weapon system they possessed wasn't made of circuits and silicon. It was made of discipline, practice, and the decision to never be helpless. Some knowledge can't be downloaded. It has to be earned, round by round, calculation by calculation, until it becomes part of your bones. The men who came before us knew this. They built their skills on foundations that couldn't be unplugged. They passed their knowledge forward, not because it was convenient, but because it was necessary. The question is whether we're still willing to learn it. If this story reminded you why fundamentals matter, the next story will show you what happened when a pilot told a Medal of Honor recipient that your generation didn't understand real combat. The veteran's response made the entire flight deck go silent. Subscribe to this channel for more stories of veterans who earned their knowledge the hard way. Comment fundamentals. If you believe some things should never be forgotten, and hit that like button if you think our warriors deserve to be prepared for anything, including the moment when the screens go dark.